everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on episode 9 of Chihayafuru, and it is, I'm not gonna lie, I recorded another series last night, and this morning, the reaction for today is humid. It is hot. There's a storm front coming in, so I'm like, but I am excited to watch this episode, Chihayafuru, hopefully before all the storms get here, so fingers crossed. But I have a couple comments I want to talk about before we dive in. Noda talked about for episode 6, which is where we met Kana. Now we have Destomu, we have Kana, and we have Nishida. We have our full 3 alongside Taichi and Chihaya. We've got our 5 to make our club. But for episode 6, the poem of the day was the Ninefold Palace, which I like that the poem of the day, the poem card goes with the title. They note, like the poem of episode 5 by Lady Murasaki, poem 61 was authored by another woman and lady-in-waiting for the Empress Shoshi, the Lady Issei no Taifu of the 36 Immortals. Although considered a key figure of the waka poetry movement, few of her works have survived into modernity. This isn't necessarily surprising, however. 20% of the Hakuna Ishu poems were written by women due to the societal constraints and expectations on the female gender. One custom for female poets was to use pen names and never reveal their real names. For example, their family relations or court titles. This was mentioned last episode as Lady Murasaki's name, quote-unquote, is a reference to a character from her Tales of Genji, and Lady Issei no Taifu is a reference to the province of Issei. As such, these women were some of the first female authors in world history and paved a path for both poets and women in the future. Yet some of their contributions have been lost over time. I would include Sappho in there because Sappho is often considered in Greek terms to not be. Some people think Sappho is fictional. I did a whole thing about her in my graduate program talking about how she actually is not fictional, but is one of the first, female rhetoricians. And people weren't ready for her sapphic poetry. They weren't ready back in the BC times. But yeah, she was definitely, it's how commonplace it is for women writers to be shunned and ignored throughout history. Oh, at least we have modernity, right? So anyway, as translated by Mostow, we have the 8-petaled cherries from the Nara capital of the ancient past, today 9 layers thick, have bloomed within your court. The poem describes a spring scene, again, comparing past with present, the 8-petaled cherry blossoms of Nara, the capital city from 709 to 784, to the 9 enclosures of the imperial residence of the new imperial court of Kyoto, the capital from 794 to 1868. That's a long time for it to be a capital, right? According to her diary, the poem was made in commemoration of the Emperor Ichijo being presented with an 8-petaled cherry blossom branch as a gift by a nobleman or bishop from the ancient capital of Nara and its Buddhist institutions. The Empress Shoshi's father, Fujiwara no Michinaga, had asked her lady-in-waiting, Lady Murasaki, to do it, but she deferred to Lady Issei no Taifu because Issei no Taifu was the newest. The poem goes along with the episode in 2 ways. How Kana describes how the poem's emotions then and now being as vivid as ever, the other being how the love that Chihaya and Kana have for Karuta, if I can talk today, are ultimately the same. I love that. I love that Chihaya's joy and infectious attitude surrounding Karuta, it often seems kind of like just very general and broad, but she just, in some respects, it's also very simple. Chihaya is just like, I want you to love the activity surrounding Karuta. And with Kana, she's kind of the same way. Her love for Karuta is also very rudimentary and very straightforward, which is fun. I love that. So thank you, Noda, for giving us that poem translation for episode 6. We love to see it. HBanana7 also says in episode 7, Destomu's voice actor is Yonaga Tsubasa, and you would know him as Nagisa from Free. What's with all these Free voice actors just jumping on board Chihayafuru, being like, oh, we've got Reen's here, we've got Sosuke's here, now we got Nagisa. We're going to have the whole batch here at some point. By season 3, we'll have the whole group. I can only hope. I really would love that. That would be amazing. But yeah, I can't believe we're on episode 9. It feels like we just started and we're already 9 episodes in, but I am really excited to see what we're going to get now that we have all 5 of them together. What does that mean for the future? Like, does that mean we just are an official club and we just practice, or are there tournaments we can enter? How does that work? So I'm hoping that we get a little bit of explanation for that in this episode. All right, y'all, I am ready to go. So let's see what happens in Chihayafuru episode 9, and we're gonna get that started here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll see you all on the other side. Oh, friends. The ending of that episode was so good. I'm like, did I just get converted to Team Taichi? I think I just got converted. Oh, okay. This mangaka is cruel. This mangaka is so savage and brutal. Oh, Let's talk about this episode. From the very start, I was like, oh, there is a pattern emerging, and I want to talk about it with y'all. So we have the 5 club members being introduced in this, and we're going to write up exactly how they are described. So we have our club all set to go. This club includes Chihaya. And Chihaya, who has been determined to be the captain now. You know, the captain instead. She describes herself as the queen. She's going to be the queen, which I believe in her, I'm sure. Queen's Gambit, let's go. Then we have Taichi, who was the VP, but the Empress is like, no, you need to be the president. And honestly, I kind of agree. I agree. At first, there was the line of like, oh, are you old-fashioned, ma'am, and you don't want a lady president of this organization? But to be fair, Chihaya has the most infectious, amazing energy. Is Chihaya the most organized? She's organized to an extent, but I feel like to be president, there needs to be someone that does have some anchorage of grounding and some realism to counter Chihaya's infectious energy sometimes. Now, we're going to talk about that with Taichi, because Taichi is grounded and Taichi is responsible and resourceful and is a good buffer for Chihaya. But he does have moments like in this episode where he may take it a little too far based on his own personal experience and is projecting based on his own personal experience. And we'll talk about that and go through how complex it is, their pairing. But I love Chihaya and Taichi together. They balance each other really well. And I think that's, if you are a fan of the ship of Taichi and Chihaya, a big plus for that ship is that they balance each other very well. But here's my thing. This is kind of what got me the moment I came back to this after the ending of that episode. Taichi is described as the jack of all trades. Jack of all trades, the master of none. And that's literally him. Like when they're looking at the case of all of his awards, he's gotten awards in horseback riding, in violin playing, in skiing. His family have had him do different athletic events and sports and getting first place in them. Is he a master in any of them? No. Because the moment that he started to lose or not win everything, his parents made him switch to something different. So he literally is a jack of all trades. And if you're going by the cards, not Karuta cards, but if you're going by like a deck of cards, you have Chihaya as the queen, you have Taichi as the jack. Who's the other 2 big place card holders? One is the ace, right? One is the ace, which we'll talk about that in a second. One is the ace. And that's this, I'll put the ace of spades up here. And then we have Chihaya, who is the queen card, right? The other is the king. Now, who do we think is the king card? Well, it's Arata. Arata wants to be the master of Karuta, or wanted to be. So we could say Arata wants to be the king. Now, if you are a shipper of Arata and Chihaya, which I'm gonna say I can multi-ship, right? I waver back and forth because I think it's not quite fair, but we'll talk about that text at the end. That text makes it interesting. But I feel like on the one hand, it's not quite fair that I say that I'm switching from Arata and Chihaya as a ship to Taichi and Chihaya, because there's the proximity bias where we've not seen Arata and Chihaya together interacting with one another for a couple episodes. So it's hard to gauge how that would go. But on the other end, we're going to talk about the text message at the end. I'm going to come back to it because that changed the game. And so I would love for Taichi to not stay a jack of all trades, but I want him to become the ace. I want him to become the ace in the hole. And I think he has every possibility of doing that. I think right now, Taichi believes that he's an all-rounder, well-rounded, balanced player, but he doesn't believe in himself as being a master, right? And that's Arata, I think, has the notion in his mind that he's like, yeah, I could be a king and I'm going to. Like, Arata has the confidence that if he thinks he's going to do it, he's going to do it. And Taichi doubts himself, which is very human, very relatable. But I'm like, Taichi, if you can't be the king, then be the ace, because the ace is the top of the game still. So I'm like, you can be the ace, Taichi, go for it. Don't just settle for being a jack. So also the jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation makes him sort of an underdog in this series. And oh, you know how I love to root for an underdog. And I was like, oh, Taichi. I'm telling you, those last 2 minutes made me root for him and Chihaya, and this episode really built upon it as well. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about throughout this. I was like, oh, this mangaka is like subtly weaving a masterclass in like ship dynamics. And I'm like, oh, just keep it coming. Keep it coming. I like that we have our cast now because it feels like the recruitment process is over and now we can focus on the card playing, which thank God apparently, because we don't have a lot of time before this tournament. Holy shit. So let's get into this. Komachi Tsutomu is our smart rookie. So good for him. So we have Tsutomu. Who is our smart rookie, which I love that. And then we have Nishida, the roundest player in Class B. That's such a backhanded compliment. So Nishida, although I like that he's an all-rounder, we'll just say that instead because that's nicer. And then we have Kana. And Kana is a very reliable fan of classical poetry. Very reliable. I feel like this is a great team dynamic here. You have your very intelligent rookie. You have Tsutomu, who's very intelligent. You have Nishida, who's very like rock solid all-rounder. And you have Kana, who's reliable. You have three great dynamics that you can build off of, you can grow off of. It looks great, right? And then Chihaya is like, I'm going to become a queen. She's like, I'm going to become a queen of the pirates. That is Chihaya, right? And the Empress is like, actually, we're not having you. I think that the Empress looked at Chihaya, who had the hearts and the dog doodle, and she was like, So, which, you know what? I had a grade school teacher that I know a lot of people do this, but when I take notes, I doodle a lot. And it's not because I'm not paying attention. Doodling helps me to focus and it helps me to like it's weird, but some people, they doodle and to focus as they're doing their note taking. And I had an English teacher in grade school that she was like, you need to stop doing that. Well, joke's on you. I never did. And I got a master's degree. So suck it. But I think that the Empress looked at that and was like, you don't need to be in charge. You're not serious enough to be in charge. One thing that I do think some people in this series, and not necessarily anybody on the team, but I think some people would easily confuse Chihaya's infectious, bubbly enthusiasm as her not being serious. And Chihaya is serious. She's serious to a fault. And that's the thing. She gets so serious that she kind of gets a little short-sighted. And I like that our characters are flawed. They're not perfection, right? Because I think that's important. Taichi has flaws. Arata has flaws. Chihaya has flaws. They all are flawed characters, but it's kind of like, you know, do their sum of good parts override that flaw? And I think it does, right? So obviously Taichi should be president. And when Taichi was like, oh, who, me? I'm like, would you think that Kana was going to be president? Who else did you think it was going to be? I mean, maybe Nishida. Nishida would be the only one objectively that would be capable, because Kana and Tsutomu have no experience with Karuta. Why would you make them president? So yeah, when Taichi's like, who, me? It's like, what? I like that. Whenever Tsutomu said he was okay with it, I'm assuming he meant for Taichi to be president, but a part of me is like, he's like, I'll be president. Why not? And then she's like, I'm going to be the captain. It's like a Dwight Schrute, I'm assistant manager to the manager, one of positions, but you know. So we have in our budget 3,000 yen. Now I do yen to USD a lot because a girl is not good with math. but their club budget is $20. $20? Really? In this economy? I mean, even in 2008 economy, $20 was nothing. Like, what did you think you were going to buy? What's the basketball team buying with their $20? A basketball? I do appreciate the realism that it is realistic for them not to get a high budget because they are a small school organization. And here is the thing. They just started. So when I watched Free Iwatobi Swim Club, fancy I'm mentioning Free Iwatobi Swim Club with this series, right? But in Free, when they started out, they didn't have a lot of money either, if I recall, because they were a brand new organization. They hadn't proven themselves. So it's one of those things that at some schools, their method is until you prove yourself as a team and you win competitions and you bring back trophies and whatever, the school's not going to give you a lot of funding because they have no clue if you're going to just waste it or use it to get actual resources that are necessary. So it makes sense that they started out giving our Karuta Club members a grand spanking total, and this poor marker is about gone, of just $20. Which, yeah, is barely enough to buy your cards that you're going to be using. But I would imagine the more tournaments they win or the better they do, the more funding they get. Because that's how it works, you know, here in the U.S. with our school systems. The better your school does, the more funding they get. You know, so there is an incentive to win. But still, it's not a lot. That's barely enough to get anything. So they're going to have to do some fundraising if they're going to... I hope y'all are ready for a car wash. Because that's what it's going to take. Now, look, when we do sports anime, and I react to sports anime on this channel, it is quite often that I get some flack because I like to insert a lot of BL coding, BL connotation, yaoi shipping, things like that that's going on. And a lot of them are like, those characters aren't in love. That's not canonical. That's not subtext. That's not context. It's just subtext. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm just having fun and doing some fan service. I'm going to say that not one of them even glanced Taichi's way when he was changing his clothes in the middle of the room. No, Kana was like not even concerned with the abs and the backside in her peripherals. Not even concerned whatsoever. You make with that what you will. And Tsutomu and Nishida, nary a glance, nary a focus. All I'm saying is if this was Blue Lock, every character would have been hyper fixated on Taichi's abs. I'm just saying. There would have been a lot of attention paid. What I'm saying is Nishida and Tsutomu are pretty much heterosexually coded, as is Taichi, and Kana is not here for the men. So yeah, I was like, I'm glad the series established that, right? We're not going to be queer baiting anybody in this, unless you're doing Kana and Chihaya together, which go for it, right? Or Arata and Taichi, because Arata wasn't here, so we don't know in his case if he would be staring. But I just thought that was so funny, because I've seen so many sports anime where it would have been focused upon, and here it's like, no, they're pretty straight. Except maybe Kana. And maybe Taichi with Arata, we don't know. But that just cracked me up because I'm so used to it in other sports anime. But we're going to talk about Taichi here in a little bit. But yes, they all do their working up and practicing. And so you have to work your way up to Class A, right? And I didn't realize players start in Class E. So it's kind of like shogi a little bit. Kind of like. So players start in... Oh, this marker is much better. We start in Class E and work our way up to Class A. Now, if I'm right, Chihaya is Class A, and then Taichi and Nishida are both Class B, so that's good. And Arata had just made it to Class A as well. Go figure. Around the time that his grandpa died. So now whether Arata has fallen or not, we don't know. But you have to start out and work your way back up to there. And depending on what society you belong to, you need to place in a certain number of tournaments. It says in first or second in 2 tournaments. So you have to get what we call legs. As soon as they mentioned this, I'm like, oh, it's a leg system. That's easy. So basically, you have to get first or second at least 2 tournaments, depending on where you're at to be class A. Yeah, in the I coach speech, and I coach a certain division that does not require legs to participate, which is fine because legs can get a little bit complicated. But when I competed at the university level, we had a leg system, which meant at the time you had to compete in at least 3 tournaments, and you had to get legs, and the legs had to equal, I think, 5. So you could get like first, and second, which would be 4 is your legs, or you could get first, second, and maybe it couldn't be over 6. If it was like first, second, and third, you could do that, or like a 3 and 1 or something. You had to basically compete in so many tournaments and get a high ranking placement to be able to have your legs met so that you could qualify for nationals. It was the same deal. But what they mean by depending on the society you're in, they're probably meaning population, because like you couldn't just go to a tournament with 2 people, get second place and be like, well, that counted. No, you had to have so many competitors and a certain population amount to give you the right to get that leg. So yeah, that's pretty much what this sounds like. So they gotta get first or second at 2 tournaments. Okay, cool. In order to qualify. I'm glad we're getting the mechanics just talked about in this. So then Chihaya shows up and she's like, I'm ready to go. Chihaya is our hype girl. She brings the hype and the joy. And Taichi brings the realistic grounding. They're such a good pair. They balance each other so well because here's the thing. Taichi is not ambitious enough. Taichi gets to a certain point and he's like, I don't know. Guys, we got to be realistic about this. Chihaya is like, sky's the limit. Let's just play our hearts out and we'll be fine. So they both kind of meet in the middle and have to form that little balance between one another, because you can't just have Taichi, because Taichi sometimes gets so caught up in being realistic about it that he loses sight of ambition and loses the joy and infectious energy that comes with Karuta, because he's so overwhelmed by the idea of, well, realistically, is this doable or not? But at the same time, Chihaya gets so wrapped up in the idealism of, oh, I'm going to be the queen and all we have to do is win, and that she forgets the other aspects that could be hurdles along the way. So they really are good at matching each other's energy and filling in the gaps where each of them kind of lack, which if you're shipping characters, that's like shipping 101. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess. So we'll talk about her and Arata at the end of this episode in comparison. But yeah, and so Taichi's like, what do you mean you're going to play against them? Beginners aren't going to learn anything by playing in someone in class A. And this is where I do disagree with Taichi and I agree with Chihaya, because she's like, you have to play strong competition in order to get better. Now, to Taichi's credit, what he was probably wanting to do is do like a step situation where you build up to playing someone in class A rank. Taichi's method was probably, hey, let's have them start out playing each other and then playing me and Nishida, and then they can build up to you. And that's just a realistic way to step up into that level. And Chihaya's like, nope, we're going to throw them in the deep end and hope they can swim. and to be fair, that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to go up against somebody really hard so that when you face someone that's not as good as Chihaya, it will seem easier, because we've done that with our own team. We've taken them to tournaments where there's been 4-year competitors that have done it for like years more than them. And I remember one freshman on the team this last year, we went to a tournament and there was all these like competitors that were seniors, and she was like, I'm a freshman. I've never competed against people to this level. And I don't know. And she did get kind of discouraged about it. But then when she did better at a tournament that had a little bit less competition, I think that it felt better, because it was like, oh, I faced these really tough opponents and that made me stronger, so that when I went up against somebody that was more my level, I was ready to dominate them. But it is a gamble. And Taichi, of course, is the person stuck with the gamble cards. So, but it is a gamble, because you can either do what Chihaya has done, catch the infection of energy, the infectious energy, catch the hype, get hooked on Karuta, and be driven by that competition. Or you could get that competition and immediately just want to quit because you think it's too overwhelming. And I think if Chihaya hadn't explained herself to Kana in that moment as well as she did, it would have dissuaded Kana from playing. And that's what Taichi was worried about. But Chihaya is a walking ray of sunshine and could sell ketchup to a woman wearing white gloves that you're just like, yeah, she's just really good at convincing people that Karuta is worth playing. So the episode's called But I Cannot Hide. I've talked for 20 minutes about this already, and we're barely in the episode. I like that we got to see Nishida talking through this episode, talking through the poems as well, seeing Nishida getting in on the action. I'm like, don't make Miyano Mamoru say this all, even though he has an amazing voice, let Taichi's vocal cords take a break for a hot second, right? But yeah, I like that Chihaya just shows how excited she is. And what Chihaya wants to do is to replicate the feeling that she had when Arata first faced her, because she was inspired from that moment of Arata playing, and she wants to do the same to everyone else. She's like, just look at how cool that is. Isn't it fun to play against somebody that's strong? Doesn't that make you want to just get better and to do it yourself? Like Chihaya's experience, I have to prevent myself from kind of falling into the same hole sometimes as Chihaya, because I can relate to her a lot in being so passionate about something that you assume everyone else is going to be just as passionate in the same way. But I think that's where Taichi does a good job of balancing, because he's like, that's not always the case. And that's something I've had to adjust to as a coach, because I love the activity that I coach. I loved it as a competitor, but I have to kind of adjust my sights a little bit, because sometimes the competitiveness that I have and the intensity that I had as a competitor, not every student that I coach is going to come at it with that same level of intensity, and that's okay. But sometimes I have to tone it down, because I'm like, okay, Romania, you're getting way too into it, and you need to step back and like let them soak it in, but don't push too hard. Sometimes I can be pushy like Chihaya, and I have to kind of brace myself a little bit. But luckily these three, they know that she's pushy and they accept it. They know that's part of it. And I think Taichi worries sometimes that Chihaya can be too intense, and he's worried that I feel like Taichi's worried for Chihaya's sake. He's worried she's going to push too hard and it's going to drive people away. And then Chihaya is going to be unhappy, because she's going to be like, well, why did they leave? And he's going to be like, well, because you pushed too hard. But in the same vein, Taichi is used to being around his mom, who's very pushy, but I would argue in not the same way as Chihaya, obviously. But Taichi also is good because he can relate to... Taichi's interesting, because if we look at Taichi, he can relate not only to Chihaya in being that drive to win, because he's kind of been pushed into that role, but in the same vein, he can relate to the loser because he knows what it's like to be overwhelmed and to feel that loss. So he knows how Kana feels in the moment where she loses to Chihaya, and he's like, hey, if you push her too hard, she might start to think that the gap is too big. And Chihaya's like, no! When I first played Karuta, I played against this man that was insanely strong, but it only made me even more motivated. And again, Taichi knows exactly who that is. He knows that it's Arata. And she's like, I wouldn't love Karuta the way I do now if he hadn't done that. And there's a part of me that that Taichi gets flustered about that, because Taichi's whole thing is Taichi, he wants, to protect Karuta for Chihaya. He wants to protect it for her and for an experience. But at the same time, there is a fact that he knows that she views Arata as her inspiration for loving. She's like, I wouldn't love Karuta if it wasn't for Arata. And Taichi's over here like, yep. But I do think eventually it's not going to happen this early on, because it's just the start of the series. I think at some point Chihaya is going to tell Taichi, being like, yes, Arata inspired me to love this game, but you've kept that love going for me, and you're the one that keeps inspiring me to this day. So I think it's going to be very much a past versus present conversation that she has with Taichi at some point. Do I think it's going to be anytime soon? No, because we've got to build up their characters a lot more. But yeah, I think that conversation, because yeah, Taichi looks really sad whenever she's like, he inspired me to love Karuta, because Taichi's like, I'm never going to be that guy that inspired her and started her inspiration. But it's sort of like a first love versus true love situation, right? And I'm not saying that she's going to end up with Taichi or she's going to end up with Arata. But if you think about it in terms of Arata was her first love, later down the road, is it going to be the scenario of Arata was my first love with Karuta, but you, Taichi, are my true love with Karuta because of X, Y, and Z? Do I think it could go that way? Sure. Do I think it's going to? I don't know. We're only 9 episodes into this series. We have a long way to go. But I'm like, damn, this mangaka is setting things up for us. And she's like, I'm not going to go easy on you. She's like, I believe that you can get better and you can handle it. So I'm going to try my hardest. And I want you. And I think that that is smart in Chihaya's way, because Taichi's like, hey, we need to build them up and, slowly build them up to this point where they're comfortable. But Chihaya has a point in that when they go to this tournament, their opponents are not going to take it easy on them. And there's a very good chance their opponents are just as strong as Chihaya. So sure, it may seem like she's just throwing the baby into the pool and being like, learn how to swim. But in the same vein, it's like, or she's also trying to make sure that they can handle it when they face somebody difficult in the future, right? And they'll look back and think, well, Chihaya was just this tough too. I want you guys to become stronger. So they're going to participate in a team at the national tournament at the end of summer. I missed that at first. At the end of summer. The fact that it's only 3 weeks away is terrifying. So this whole thing is in 3 weeks. The moment I heard that, you know what flashbacks I got? And if you've watched this series, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I instantly got like Haikyuu season 1 flashbacks. And that's all I'm going to say. But I was like, oh, okay. Do I think that they are going to go very far in this first season? No. I could be pleasantly surprised. But I think this first season is getting the basics down, getting the ropes down. I don't know. We're only on episode 9, and I'm assuming we've got a couple episodes until this tournament starts, and then maybe the rest of the series for this season is going to be about the tournament itself. But I was like, I was like, what are we going to be doing I don't think they're going to get far this first time around. I don't know if they're going to make the tournament the first time around. And they're all just first years, right, in high school. So I feel like they're not going to make nationals until at least their second year. But I could be wrong. Or maybe they make nationals and they don't get very far. I don't know. So in July, there's a tournament at the Omi Jingu Shrine, which is the one they've been talking about for a while. Because I think it's the Jingu tournament is the one she said that she went to go look for Arata at and he wasn't there. So they want to determine the best high school players in Japan. It's like Koshin of Karuta. Look, I watched a lot of Ace of the Diamond. Koshin's a big freaking deal, and it's really hard to get into. So that does not inspire confidence that this ragtag group of kids are going to be able to go to nationals on the first go. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate Chihaya's like confidence, but he's like, we just started playing. She's like, it'll be fine. She's like, I'm going to play real matches, and you guys are going to play too, so we'll get better. Now, I like, again, Taichi being realistic. I definitely feel as if the two of them have this perfect balance between them, where Chihaya has all this idealism and Taichi has all this realism. And he's like, well, they sounded like a married couple on the train, where he was like, the tournament, do you think you're playing Kamano and Oe-san, you won't have any time for serious practice? And she's like, oh, well, it'll be fine. She's like, I'll be good there. And he's like, are you sure? He's like, don't you want to win the individual tournament? And she's like, yeah. So they'll have the team tournament, but they'll also have individuals. So she could place as an individual as well as them placing as a team. And he says, don't worry about the club. Practice at the Shiranami Society. Now, she's like, Nishida and I will take care of the 2 rookies. And then she's like, no. So here's the thing. Taichi, my dude, he is so self-sacrificing. He knows that her becoming queen is like her end goal. That is like her personal objective, right? And he is saying that he knows what her aims are. And he's telling Chihaya, he's like, what you need to do is practice for yourself so that you can get to that level that you want, Right. But it's what I say by self-sacrificing is if Taichi was being selfish in this moment, he would have said, no, he's like, yeah, we'll practice as a team. He would, if he was being selfish and only thinking of trying to monopolize his time with her to get her to quote unquote like him, like she likes Arata, in his mind, like she likes Arata, which is debatable depending on who's watching this series right now, I'm sure, then he would want her to practice at the club with him as much as possible so he could spend all the time with her. But what he's suggesting is you go practice on your own so you can get good enough to be queen, knowing good and well that Arata's practicing by himself so he can be king. So Taichi is basically sacrificing his chances with Chihaya in this moment, saying, you go practice to get the best of the best, and then you and Arata can be king and queen of Karuta, and that's just how it will be. I'll never be as good as Arata. No. That's what he's suggesting. And he's being like self-sacrificial of like, I'm going to sacrifice this opportunity to be with you so that you can achieve your dreams, which, okay, great. But then she's like, Taichi, do you realize why I wanted to play Karuta in the first place? I wanted to play it because we were a team. And he's like, okay, I get it. Yeah. So she's like, that's great that you're thinking of me, but I'll be fine. The whole reason I'm playing Karuta is not just to be the queen, but because I want us to have fun as a team. That's why I love Chihaya. She's ambitious and she wants to be the best, but she doesn't want to be the best at the sacrifice of playing with others. And I think that's where Arata might be a little bit different than her, because Arata, I think, was totally okay with sacrificing the team dynamics so that he could be the best, and not in a mean or like egotistical way. That's just how he viewed things, because he's kind of a lone wolf. And Chihaya is not a lone wolf. She's a freaking social butterfly. And she's like, no, she's like, I want to be the best, but not at the expense. She's like, I organized this Karuta club because I wanted to play with people. She's like, if I wanted to just better myself, I would have just played at the society and not made the club at all. She's like, but that's not how this is. So, and I think Taichi is kind of happy that she wants to play with them as a team. So they talk about positioning when you're placing cards on your side of the field and to memorize the position. I like the idea that both Tsutomu talks about putting them all on the left side because he's left-handed, and you have Kana talking about putting things in a specific corner because that's where she feels most comfortable. And Taichi, again, is realistic, and he points out saying, yeah, you can do that. Just know that if you make something easy for you, it's possibly going to be easy for your opponent as well. So it's all like a game of back and forth and what is going to work best, but also be competitive and work in your favor. So yeah, I thought I just love the way that we're learning Karuta and learning how to set things up in practice in these early episodes, because that's going to make it later on really interesting to watch how the matches go. I love that. So we have Nishida reading the poems this time, which is fun. And then we get Kana getting her own card, getting her first card, saying, and I have yet to visit Amano Hashirate or read my mother's letters. I was so proud of Kana. I'm like, look at you, girl, getting your first card. And I don't think Taichi went easy on her. I think she legit got that. But yeah, it's those little moments where you get those little accomplishments that make you feel so justified in what you're doing. Now, do I think that there's going to come a time in this tournament where Tsutomu and Kana like doubt themselves and are like, why am I even here? And it's going to be angsty McBoots pants? Probably. But I'm still looking forward to seeing it. I think it's going to be fun either way. But yeah, she's like, I am not alone. I'm helping to pass on what you passed on to me. Again, I think that Taichi sometimes views her love of Arata as romantic. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, it could end up becoming like that. But there's also a part of me that's like, Taichi, I think you might be missing something. Because when she talks about Arata and wanting to pass on what his passing to her. We've talked about this in previous episodes, but with Arata, it's almost like Chihaya, she kind of idolizes him and puts him up on a pedestal, but she also idolizes him because he inspired her and helped her become a better person and gain her own like agency. But I don't think, compared to the early parts of the season, like I told y'all, I can change my mind and develop my thoughts as we go. I think looking back on it, I feel like some of her thoughts here with Arata are not necessarily romantic. They're just like, we're really good friends, and I kind of like idolize the inspiration that he's given me, but I don't think she looks at him romantically with the kind of fondness that Taichi believes that she does. I think Taichi thinks her feelings for Arata are romantic and sexual when they are not necessarily. They're just her being inspired by him, right? Because she kind of views him like a Karuta god, which is not something you have romantic thoughts towards. And if Arata likes Chihaya, that's probably not good for him. He's like, oh, I don't want her to idolize me. I want her to see me as a person. And it's like, ugh. So that's where Arata's problem is. She views him, she thinks too good of him. And he's like, whoa, 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 I'm a person though. Don't forget that. I'm flesh and blood. And I don't know if Taichi realizes that. I don't know if he realizes that, right? So yeah. So anyway, we have a lot of stuff going on here with them practicing, and I love the Empress tells them to go home. So they're thinking about where they should go for matches. And then Chihaya brings up that there were summer camps that the society would hold to help build up their stamina. And everybody's like, well, we'd love to go to a summer camp. And she's like, wait a minute. I know where we can go. And she just instantly invites herself into Taichi's house. And Taichi's like, what? So Taichi's parents are in Kobe for a wedding. Taichi's parents are effing loaded. That's a really nice damn house. Mm-hmm. Their family's pretty wealthy. They are well off. Them high ceilings, that's a nice house right there. This house scene, a couple things about it we need to take note of in the shipping realm. So she comes over to help set everything up. They're getting all the cards. They're getting the food together. I like that, again, Chihaya, only thing she's worried about are them Karuta cards on the desk. I also love her overall shorts. She's like, I've got my little duffel bag for spending the night. Got my Karuta cards. It's all good. Taichi, meanwhile, is unloading the survival necessities like drinks and food, which just shows their priorities, and it's great. But here's the thing. She is like, he's like, are you seriously spending the night? And she's like, yeah. She's like, that's right. And she's like, show me your room before everyone gets here. We used to play games there. Do you have a new big TV or something? Let me see. And then he grabs her arm and says, now look here. This scene is so interesting because Taichi is setting some boundaries. Taichi is setting up some boundaries and establishing some things right off the bat. Now, I joked that Taichi had pictures of her everywhere in a shrine. Do I think he actually does? Probably not. It would be really funny if he had a big picture of her on his bed and she'd be like, why is this here? And he's like, so, we can joke about that all day long. But at the end of the day, Taichi is establishing some boundaries. Taichi is doing a smart thing here. He is establishing that, look, girl, we used to be childhood friends, but that has changed now. There is a difference. We're young adults, and I am establishing the boundary that I don't want us to be just friends. He's like, it's not right for a girl just to walk up into a guy's room, which feels a little sexist, outdated for 2000. It was 2007. It was a different time. I know where he's coming from because I was a teenager during that time, so I get it, right? You don't just usually invite yourself into it. Here's the thing. You don't invite, when I was a teenager, young adult, late teens, around the time this series was coming out, the anime was coming out, my mentality was, if you went into a guy's room, just willy-nilly casual, you were just friends. Nothing else was going to come of it. But if it was somebody that you were potentially going to be in a romantic relationship with, there's a little bit more of intimacy tied into going someone's bedroom. There's expectations there. There's possibilities there. So Taichi's setting this boundary of saying you don't just go into a guy's room. He's saying, we may have played there as kids, but there's a boundary now, and I might want to be more than just friends with you, and so I don't want you just going up in there. Now, is that mentality a little bit dated to modern day society? Maybe. maybe. I think that we've maybe evolved our dating standards a little bit, that's changed. But for the time that this was published, yeah, no, I get it, because that was the mentality. You didn't go into a guy or a girl's bedroom if you were considering dating them, because that was a tie of intimacy. And so when he stops her there, he holds her arm and he's like, you shouldn't be running to a guy's room like that. I'm not going to let you in. He's setting a boundary there, being like, that space is private to me, and if you and I go in there, I'm going to assume it's under a circumstance where we're not just friends. Now, is he also setting that precedent to try to tell her that, so if she goes back to Arata's room? I don't know. And that's going to be brought up into question? I don't know, because Chihaya is very impulsive. So I don't know if that's setting that, but he's like, I don't want you to just go to my room. That's a private place for me. I'm setting a boundary. Let's not do that. And then he lets her hand go. But I mean, I get why Taichi does set that boundary, and I think he has every right to. And if he really likes her and likes her romantically, that boundary is perfectly fine to set. I think that Taichi has enough angst in his heart right now, and he's very torn with trying to maintain this balance of them being friends in the Karuta Club and him romantically being interested in her, because at this point we've not heard of the girlfriend and who knows when, so he's probably broken up with her. But I think it's important that he establishes this boundary, and I think that was really good for him to do, because then it kind of sets a precedence of, we're not just, bestie friendsies from kids days. This could lead to something different. And she kind of stands there and thinks about it for a second and is like, oh, okay. I feel like she contemplates okay, I won't go in there. We've established that boundary. All right. I love Nishida saying, for the first time in my life, I feel like we live in a class society. Yeah, Taichi's house. Taichi, I think it's a little bit blind to how privileged he is, but with this being one of those moments, because he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, dude, you have a foyer that's bigger than some people's apartments. So yeah, okay, for the special occasion, he brought the cake for her birthday, which, again, Chihaya forgot it was her own birthday. Girl, she is that insanely obsessed with Karuta. Which, again, Taichi brought her a cake. That's also, he bought her a cake. He got them together. That's so sweet. Because she's only worried about the camp, right? She gets a little short-sighted with that sometimes. So yeah, we get his trophy room. I want to see Kid Taichi on a horseback, right? And he's like, yeah, my parents made me take all kind of lessons. Why is Chihaya showing you these? So I said Taichi does look a little bit like his mom, but they must take after the dad too, because the sister and him look exactly alike. Now, Chihaya saying that she doesn't get along with the mom is a very interesting development. I like it, because what I think it means is that Chihaya and his mom are going to have a conversation at some point, and I'm hopeful that at that point Chihaya will have matured a little bit more, that she has a very relevant, important conversation with her. So we'll see where that takes us, right? We'll see where that goes, but I'm excited because I think that that's foreshadowing Mrs. Pressure, right? Because Chihaya is the opposite of pressure. Chihaya doesn't apply pressure. She's just so light and carefree, right? I also they go to the side room to practice Karuta. It's great. And they have the match scheduled day one, right? They have Desk Tomu, and Chihaya plays, how many matches does she play? She plays, I guess they all play 4 matches. Yeah, she plays 4 matches. Desk Tomu plays 5 matches. No, 6. Desk Tomu plays 6, and so does Kana. They play all day, right? And then they swap out readers and all of that. I mean, from judging speech competitions and when we do trainings, this is not much different than the trainings that we do. We do rounds kind of like this. I don't know if we do 5 in a day. That's pretty extreme. But we do rounds back to back as well to help get your stamina up. Because usually, they talked about doing 4 matches in a day. Most rounds, when we have speech tournaments, there are 3 preliminary matches and then a finals match. So you're doing your speech 4 times a day. So yeah, that sounds about right. So yeah, they just go hard the first day. And she's like, I want you to win. I just feel Chihaya's passion. I share her enthusiasm as a coach. I love that Chihaya, she wants to be queen and she's ambitious, but she also wants them to win. She wants them to be successful. And that's such an amazing coach mentality to have. She's got some maturing to do. Don't get me wrong. But she's got such an infectious energy. I love it. I love it so much. And yeah, they don't even get to the last match of the day because everybody's just zonked out. And Taichi has to be like, look, Kana's over there, hunched over, like just spewing poetry like a zombie, and Tsutomu's just like giving up on life. Like Taichi can have the self-awareness to recognize when they've reached their limit, and Chihaya's like, but we could still keep going. And he's like, no. He's like, we're not going to keep practicing. And he's like, that's enough for today. Now, Nishida doesn't mind. Nishida's like, oh, hell yes. We get like the bougie food, the bougie ramen. We're doing great. And you can tell Chihaya, I love her daddy beef shirt. That's great. But you can tell she feels a little bit upset because she feels like she might have overdone it and she got a little too short-sighted. But again, that's where their balance is. That Chihaya, she is so enthusiastic and encouraging, and Taichi has to kind of like say, oh yeah, here's where we need to stop, right? But her energy isn't a bad thing. It's just good that she has people there that help her kind of stay grounded, right? But man, that hearing comes in handy when noticing that mom is there and they book it out of there. Also, yeah, Taichi's sister looks exactly like him, but she seems like a spoiled brat. She seems like a very spoiled brat. She's like, I don't know what USJ is. I want to say, what is USJ in Japan? What is that? Oh, Universal Studios Japan. Oh, we weren't going to Universal Studios, so let's go home. I don't know. The sister strikes me as a little bit bougie and a little bit snooty. I'm like, is she forced to do competitions like her brother, or is that going to be an interesting point of contesting? Interesting. But yeah, then she drags. Again, Chihaya, girl, the strength of our girl. I know Kana doesn't weigh a lot, but still, carrying somebody on your back the whole way home, that's pretty tough. Chihaya's a tough girl. And then, of course, our girl goes to bed, and she thinks back to what Taichi told her about, do you want to break people who are trying their best? And I think that in that moment, Taichi was projecting a little bit on himself onto the situation because Taichi has broken when he's been put under pressure like that. And so he doesn't want other people to suffer the same way he has. But in the same vein, they're the same age. If they get overwhelmed, they can say that they're overwhelmed, right? They have the right to do that. And Chihaya just wants them to have the best experience possible. So it's like, I get where both Chihaya and Taichi come from, so it's good that they balance each other out, right? But poor Chihaya, I think her problem is that when she does, as a kid, she seemed in the flashback episodes to just be so bright and bubbly nonstop, right? And just being like, everything's fine, it'll all work out. But now that she's older, I feel like when she does get that moment of clarity and self-awareness, she's suddenly like, oh, did I overdo it? And am I driving people away and possibly shooting myself in the foot with this? She's like, people always used to tell me that I only cared about Karuta. And her saying that she's no good and like getting sad about it, like, I feel really bad. And the thing about it is, if Taichi knew that she was saying that about herself, I think he would shut that down immediately. It's funny because I think that Arata and Chihaya both feel the same way about themselves. He feels like he's not a good person. She feels like she's not a good person. And Taichi's in the middle of the love triangle, having to convince them both that they're both great while telling himself that he's not a bad person. So it's like, can they be a throuple? Can they be a throuple? Can we just do that? Can we solve all the problems and just make them a throuple? Why is it not societally acceptable to have them as a throuple? Why is that not, why won't that work? Can it work? Anyway, what's interesting is that they all decided to meet up for Chihaya's birthday. It's like they planned ahead with this, which I think is fun. And when they all met together, I thought they were going to play Karuta out there to get away from the mom so that she didn't know. But they're going to tell her happy birthday. Now, when she said she was sorry, Taichi did not look surprised because, of course, Taichi's probably like, oh, you have a bleeding heart and you put your heart on your shoulder. She's like, I should pay more attention to you. Everyone's trying their hard, but I was pushing you too much. And when they looked to Taichi like, where's she coming from? Taichi looks like he feels a little bit bad because he probably has figured out that he probably has contributed to her feeling that way. And they're like, we didn't think you were too bad at all. We know that you're pushy, but we know it's coming from a good place. It doesn't hurt to have somebody like that around. And she's like, oh, Porky. And she's like, we have to work hard because you're so earnest about it. I have a feeling I'll grow to love Karuta. Aw. And of course, Taichi's the one that brings out the damn fruitcake. He would be the one to do it. It's just like, you know that Taichi thought about this birthday. He thought about it for her. He got Nishida to get the cake for them. He brought it out to her. Like, he was being so good in this moment. And to give her the 16th birthday cake. Like, our girl is 16. Oh. And they say happy birthday. Like, oh. And when the confetti flies and when she puts the happy birthday... And they're like, here, everybody get a knife and the spoons. And Nishida's like, let's just eat it whole. And like, you get the nameplate, Chihaya. And like, hurry up and eat up. And when they turn around, I love that she cries with the happy birthday in her mouth. And then he has the nerve. Taichi has the nerve to say, as long as you have a smile on your face, Karuta will always be fun. He planned out this beautiful birthday for her. And it was so damn good. And she cries about it. And she blows out the candles. And there's a shooting star. And everything's great. Everybody's having the best time. And when Taichi looks up at her. And she's like, it's so good. Like, he looks up at her with the meal. And you could just feel the yearning coming off the screen. And Nishida talks about how Taichi's mom is scary. And like, she's apparently taking the longest bath in history because they had time to eat this damn tart and go back to his house. So unless they were just right outside it. But then his phone rings. And he gets a message notification. And we get the text. And the moment he reads the text, Taichi has like a near stroke. Because it's from Arata. The person that is his rival, the person he believes is going to end up with Chihaya, who is the woman that he loves, sends him the text message to tell her that he said happy birthday. Oh, this is payback for the glasses. This is payback for the glasses. Taichi, you cursed yourself. You gave yourself 1,000 years of bad karma by stealing his glasses that very first match. You did this, sir. You have given yourself this bad karma that has followed you until this moment. Because the last thing he wants to do is have to turn around and tell her this. And that animation of him just being, he almost shut the phone and probably ignored the text was there. And we're going to talk about it, but then she comes around. He almost shuts the phone and acts like the text wasn't a thing. But then she says his name. And he turns around and she's like, I'll give you the last bit of the crust. And she's like, just kidding, it's all mine. And he's like, that moment? Can we talk about this moment? This conversation where she's about to eat the cake and he's like, no, no, no. He does the flirtiest thing he can do in this moment, which is put his hand over hers and take the pie for himself. It's like that moment of selfishness because it's like it's like him saying, I'm going to savor this moment with you, girl, because I'm about to kick myself in the nuts. I'm going to savor this moment and flirt in front of you and be up in your business and take this moment of intimacy because I'm about to shoot myself in the foot because why do I have to be a nice guy and do this? But I'm going to do it. He's like, I want this moment of me being not a nice guy because I'm about to be that nice guy. So let me have this. And he has like her hand in his and he's looking at her. Oh, the flirting. Oh, the yearning. But then Taichi has to be the nicest person. And before she can process what's just happened, because she's like, oh, that was a flirty moment with you, sir. Before she can even process that, he's like, I'm going to be the nice person and take the high road. And I'm going to let you see this text message. And then he's like, here's the text. And she drops the spoon and there's a shooting star. Now the question is, did Taichi wish on that shooting star? because she's not even looking at it. And he has to turn his back because he knows he doesn't want to see her face and how she reacts. And she's stunned when she sees him say, Taichi, I'm sorry about before. Tell Chihaya happy birthday for me. Oh, it's like Sweet 16. Uh-huh. And it's from him. And of course, she like treasures this text from him. And she's like, today is the best birthday ever. And the thing about it is, this is so complex in this moment. And I'll tell you why it's complex. Because for one, for being the best birthday ever, Taichi would probably believe that it's the best birthday ever, and she would think that because it was Arata that texted her. But that's not what I think it is. I think it's because of everything involved. She got to have a Karuta camp with her club. They have an official club for once. She's not alone playing Karuta. She's with Taichi and all of these new people. She's having fun. And on top of that, the guy that she hasn't talked to in 5 years that inspired her to play the game and that she wants to get back into it and wants to know that they're still friends has told her happy birthday. So it's a combination of all these great things leading it to be an amazing birthday. But now, does Taichi think that her birthday is amazing just because Arata texted her and all the stuff he did up until that point doesn't matter now? He might think that, but that's not the case. Chihaya loves everything involved in this. This was just the cherry on top of the cake, right? And Taichi's here sulking because he's like, he believes that all of his efforts to get close to Chihaya will never work because Arata's always going to be one place holding above him. That Arata's always going to be one level above him no matter what he does. But that's not true. And I think that a lot of it is she idolizes Arata, but does Arata hold a romantic place in her heart? I don't think so. I don't know. It doesn't seem that way. She treasures Arata, but does Taichi believe she treasures him in a romantic way? Probably. Does she actually do that? I don't know. But here's what makes it interesting. Arata with the text. Did Arata make Taichi give her the text because it's like karma and getting back at him for taking his glasses all those years ago? I joke about that, but I don't think that's actually the case. Why didn't Arata text her himself? He has her phone number. She has texted him. She has texted him and said, hey, it's us. We're coming. He has her phone number. He could text her outright and not have to go through Taichi to do it. So why text Taichi? Because Arata's a coward, just like Taichi was. That's the thing. Back during those first few episodes, when Taichi took the glasses, he's like, I was a coward, and that's why I took your glasses from you. And Arata in that episode said, well, I'm kind of a coward too, so I understand where you're coming from. Arata quitting Karuta because of what happened is objectively, or, you could say, a cowardly move. But he did it anyway. So, you could sulk about it and be mad about it. But I think what will make Taichi better in the long run is that Arata, if he keeps up with his cowardice, unbeknownst to Taichi, I don't think Taichi's put two and two together with this. Taichi is getting closer and closer to Chihaya as these episodes go on and establishing himself as an anchor for her and as someone she can balance with and rely upon. And I don't think Taichi realizes that courageousness it took a lot of courage to not delete the text message. It took a lot of courage to show that to the woman you love, knowing that you think she has a crush on him. Like, that took a lot of courage. And I think that the courage Taichi is gaining is going to benefit him in the long run. He just doesn't realize it yet. And I'm like, my dude. I think that Taichi's eventually going to confront Arata and be like, why don't you talk to her directly? Do you like her? What is going on? Are you just friends? Because I like her, so what do we do about this? But I think that that's going to be like a long down the line thing that's going to happen. But the fact that Taichi showed her the message, got her the birthday cake, balances out so well with her. I'm like, I was Team Arata and Chihaya, and maybe it's just because of a proximity bias that we haven't had her with Arata lately, but I'm kind of rooting for Taichi now. I'm kind of rooting for him. He's still got a lot of flaws, and he's got a long way to go. But this series, I said it from the beginning, he's going to make me root for him. And I can't believe it only took us 9 episodes. Oh my God, I've talked for an hour about this episode. Oh, but this episode was so damn good. Oh, well, I know I've talked to the point where I'm nearly making myself hoarse, and I'm gonna have to go get some more tea, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts about this episode and what you all think about it. So I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. This episode was fantastic, and I can't wait to see what else we're gonna get next week. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I will be back very soon with episode 10 of Chihayafuru. Bye.